The governor of Illinois is Jabba the Hutt. And he said yesterday on Joy... I'm sorry, what? That's not Jabba the Hutt? Boy, that looks like Jabba the Hutt. Oh, apparently his name is Pritzker, and he's a multi-billionaire. They have hotels or something. All right. He could very well be Jabba the Hutt. What he told Joy Reid, though, about what he's going to do as governor of Illinois is, well, borderline treasonous. Watch.
Governor Pritzker, thank you for being here. Let's talk about that. Can the state of Illinois prevent the federal government from building internment camps, aka what they're calling detention facilities in Chicago?
Well, we have prohibited by law in the state of Illinois the use of any of our existing county jails or prisons for the purpose of rounding people up and detaining them. I want to be clear that there are certain circumstances in which the federal government, state governments should work together to allow deportation. An example would be somebody who's been convicted of a violent crime. But they're talking about rounding up people who are law-abiding, undocumented immigrants in this country, many of whom are working, paying taxes, not getting any benefits for those taxes, I might add. And we have a law on the books in the state of Illinois called the Trust Act, which prohibits our local law enforcement and sheriffs and the like from coordinating with the federal authorities. But we cannot prohibit them, federal law enforcement, from coming into our state to conduct raids or do anything else like that. Meanwhile, I think it would be very difficult for them to just spread out across the country. They don't have enough manpower within the Department of Homeland Security in order to carry that out. So, look, I'm going to do everything that I can to protect our undocumented immigrants. They're residents of our state. And I also obviously need to make sure that whatever they're doing in our state, the federal government, that it is actually within federal law or state law for them to do it.
It is.
Okay, so a couple of things of note there. You notice, by the way, we have a law in Illinois. It's called the Trust Act. It prohibits local law enforcement from participating and working with federal law enforcement agencies like ICE. They call it the Trust Act. That's a sanctuary state law. Okay, they've rebranded it. They thought it was beautiful to call it sanctuary state because I guess they were acting like some, person running for sanctuary, like Quasimodo running for sanctuary at a church back in the medieval days or something. Yes, we're going to provide you sanctuary, sanctuary, sanctuary. And of course, once the American people learned what sanctuary city, sanctuary state laws were, we find it odious and find it reprehensible. So the left does what the left always does, which is rebrand it. Affirmative action was obviously odious to the American people because it was racist and discriminatory by giving people of color who were less qualified than somebody who wasn't a person of color a job merely because they were a person of color. So they rebranded affirmative action to DEI. DEI now, of course, is odious to the American people once they learn. So they'll rebrand it to something else. They'll call it unicorns and rainbows or whatever. This is what they do. So they've got a law in Illinois that prohibits local law enforcement from actually working to enforce the law. That's Illinois for you. But this last thing he said is really noteworthy. I want you to listen very, very carefully.
Within the Department of Homeland Security in order to carry that out. So, look, I'm going to do everything that I can to protect our undocumented immigrants. They're residents of our state. And I also obviously need to make sure that
I'm going to do whatever I can to protect what he calls the residents of our state. It's an interesting little catch there. He started to call them undocumented immigrants and then called them the residents of our state. He's going to do whatever he can as governor of Illinois to protect the residents of his state. What about the citizens of your state? What about the law-abiding, legal, tax-paying citizens of your state? Governor Jabba, what's wrong with them? Why won't you extend that same sort of protection to them? So there's your governor of Illinois declaring that he's going to do whatever he can to protect the illegal immigrants in his state. And who is he protecting them from? From federal law enforcement agents. He is protecting them from federal law enforcement. He's aiding and abetting criminals, is what he's doing. And he's bragging about it, and he's celebrated for it. This is Governor Pritzker, Jaba's first big foray into the 2028 presidential election sweepstakes. He wants to go all Howard Taft on us and become the fattest president in American history. Meanwhile, who isn't Governor Pritzker protecting the people of Illinois from? Well, he's not protecting them from actual criminals. He's not protecting them from people who would do citizenship harm. Right now, there are 37 crimes in Chicago for every 1,000 residents. You have a 1 in 27 chance of being the victim of either a violent or a property crime in the city of Chicago. But Governor Jaba's main perspective here and main focus is protecting the illegal immigrants. You know, the people who have already broken federal law. Protect them from law enforcement. Well, what else is going on in Chicago?
Both of the governors behind this effort to push back against the Trump administration's agenda, you mentioned Illinois' JB Pritzker and Colorado's Jared Polis, represent sanctuary states where a lot of Democratic voters went for Trump in large part over the issue of immigration.
I am so sorry, boys and girls. We'll start this clip again, but I realize I made a mistake, and I hate making mistakes. His name is JB Pritzker, not Jaba. I apologize. You can see how I made that mistake. Wow. Although I don't, do we know what the JB stands for? Perhaps it's short for Jaba, because he looks like a Jaba, doesn't he? There's no evidence that shows he is, in fact, a Hutt from the planet Tatooine, although the resemblance is uncanny. Which, of course, I think that would make him an alien as well. Legal or illegal, we're not sure. But maybe that's why he wants to protect all of the illegal aliens in his state, because he's one of them. He is, in fact, Jaba, the governor. Sorry. Apparently, it's pronounced JB. I'll try to remember that. It's going to be hard.
Governors behind this effort to push back against the Trump administration's agenda, you mentioned Illinois' JB Pritzker and Colorado's Jared Polis, represent sanctuary states where a lot of Democratic voters went for Trump in large part over the issue of immigration. The goal of this new organization, called Governors Safeguarding Democracy, is essentially to create playbooks for how governors across the country can fight against the Trump administration's agenda on everything from immigration and his plans for mass deportations to education and healthcare by using the combined legislative, budgetary, and administrative powers of state leaders.
We are loyal to the Constitution and are loyal to the people of our states. And so this isn't about, creating some massive divide. Indeed, this is just about responding to concerns that governors will have about dealing with what seems to be an onslaught from the new administration.
The timing of this announcement right after the election is notable, given that it's just the latest nationwide initiative from Pritzker to support Democratic Party policies, as he's considered a potential presidential candidate for 2028. But some local Democrats in his own state argue that Pritzker and Governor Jared Polis are ignoring the strong message voters sent last week about the priorities and direction of the Democratic Party.
Clearly, there's a disconnect with the party elite versus the everyday Democrats. We know that messaging from the Democratic Party's elite, glitterati, failed miserably this 2024. And to think that you can keep replicating that same message and get a better result is just the definition of insanity.
Just looking at Deep Blue, Illinois, this election was the worst performance by a Democratic presidential candidate since Bill Clinton in 1992. And for Donald Trump, it was the best performance for a Republican here since 1988.
Yeah, that's a Chicago alderman you just saw there. He's on the ground in Chicago. He has to actually deal with the fallout of the policies of JB Pritzker. Pritzker's, of course, in his mansion in Springfield, far removed from what's going on the ground in Chicago. The alderman has to deal with these nightly meetings where the residents of Chicago are screaming at him because the resources are being taken from their communities, from their children's schools, and given to the illegal immigrants who have taken up residence in that city. And of course, the crime that comes along with it and the drain of resources and people living on the sidewalks and people living on the streets. And well, it's a place run by Democrats. And Jabba looks at all of that and recognizes that the real problem is Donald Trump and federal immigration enforcement officers. And he's going to do whatever he can. How did he put it? I'll do whatever I can, everything in my power to protect the illegal immigrants. You never hear him say that he'll do everything in his power to protect the tax-paying citizens of Chicago or the state of Illinois. That doesn't get you on Joy Reid's show. That doesn't get you the nomination for president for the Democratic Party. I'm sure that one upside of all this is that JB Pritzker and Democrats like him are incredibly popular with illegal immigrants, right? I mean, that's the play here. We let all these people into the country. We say that we're going to protect them. That virtue signaling brings us some votes from elitists who live on the East Coast and the West Coast behind their armed, guard, protected, gated communities so that they can make themselves feel better by voting for the little people who need some help so that they can stay in the country illegally and cut their lawns and take out their garbage and bust their tables and deliver their food and maybe even raise their children, because who wants to deal with all the ickiness of toddlers, right? And then I guess they think that eventually these illegal immigrants will either vote illegally for them or they'll get amnesty and citizenship and be oh so grateful to JB Pritzker and all the Democrats like him for protecting them while they were in the country illegally. So if anyone's happy about it, it's the illegal immigrants, right? Well, CNN went and found some illegal immigrants and asked them about that. Let's see what they had to say.
If you get deported, would you regret your support to Donald Trump?
No me arrepentiría.
He's saying that he wouldn't regret supporting Donald Trump. So you're really not thinking about yourself. You're thinking about your children and the future of your children.
Yes, I want the better for my children.
The illegal immigrant supports Donald Trump, and if he gets deported, he won't regret that support because he's thinking about a bigger picture here than just himself. The illegal immigrant gets it. The illegal immigrant is, frankly, in this case, more in tune with the American people and the voters and the sentiment and the rule of law than the governor of Illinois, who, if you missed it, is now a leading candidate for president for 2028. And don't forget his name. It's JB. Well, we can now exhale, right? Take that deep breath. Our side won. Work can finally be done on the major issues this country is facing. And one of the most significant is our national debt. The fact is, our country is broke. And that debt is a house of cards that can't quickly be dismantled. So the strategy remains the same now for you personally. Diversify your savings. So many things are out of our control, even out of President Trump's control, frankly. It's important to have a safe haven for your savings. Birch Gold Group, they'll help you convert an IRA or 401k into an IRA of physical gold. And the best news is it doesn't cost you a penny out of pocket. Text my name, Larry, Larry, to 989898. Get a free info kit on gold. And right now, listen to this offer. Right now, between now and Black Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, you're going to get a free 1-ounce silver eagle for every $5,000 purchased. Diversify your savings with Birch Gold. Text Larry, Larry, to 989898. Claim your eligibility for free silver today.